Hello, everybody. If that is in fact your name. Man, it's always something, right? I'm on the wrong network. So hopefully it doesn't get laggy and weird. It's always something. Seriously, my microphone just blew out right before I came in here. Does the video start playing when he goes live, or do I need to hit refresh? Derek, I think you have the answer to your question. John McKee with the roll call. There's John, there's Brian, Hank, Jeff, Brian, another one. Matthew, Chuck, Eugene, David, Sloth Bear 2, The Quickening. I did that last time, didn't I? Gary is here. Donna is here. Rob, Paul, and Derek. And Amy. You cross your legs for luck? There we go. Wow, so it's already started lagging? Great. Yeah, mic sounds good. The video is probably weird. Okay, well, let's do a thing. One day technology won't be an issue. And I think I mean that in a good way. I need something to hold this down. This will probably do it. All right, stand by. Here we go. It's almost like I'm here. It's Thursday, the 11th of February, 2021, and this is macOS Can Live. Seriously, if you wave your computer near the table and then squint, it's like I'm right there on the table. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Ray. Thank you very much for joining us for this thing that we do in the afternoon, macOS Can Live. It happens live Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. Whether you are catching it live right now or catching it not live later, either on video or audio, very happy to have you along, however you're coming along. Second part of the show, I kind of don't want to tease because it ties in with the first part of the show. I'll just say, for the second part of the show, I really hope that Dan Riccio is doing what people think he's doing. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. First half of the show is inspired by, I would say, the new AR experience that Apple has put out today. I don't want to call it a game because I haven't done that much of it. And I also don't want to say that it's about that game because, did I mention, I haven't done much of it. I probably spent about 5 minutes total with For All Mankind Time Capsule. Now, if you don't know what that is the thing that Apple has put out. They actually put out a press release about it, which is weird because they don't put out a press release about everything. Well, in fairness, it was in the Apple TV Plus newsfeed, which I'm in because it's fun to hear what Apple has to say about something about a week after deadline says it. But either way, For All Mankind Time Capsule is a new augmented reality AR experience that brings the world of Apple TV series For All Mankind right into the homes of fans to uncover memories from the lives of the characters from the show. Through an interactive AR experience, fans join Danny as he examined keepsakes full of details about the off-screen lives of the characters and world of For All Mankind, where every object tells a story. So there's your tease. There's your lead-in. There's why they say you should get it. Now, what's funny to me is they say you should get it so you can learn more about For All Mankind, and I don't care. I don't care about For All Mankind. I am always interested in the AR experience, which, spoiler alert, is always lackluster. Now, it's getting so much better, but you probably know the one problem that I have with it. We'll talk about the bad sides in a bit. Let's talk about the good sides first. What's interesting is, so you load the app, and first of all, there is a serious audio component to this. You can't just play on screen. I mean, I guess you could just play on screen, but you're getting left like messages on the Codaphone. Remember Codaphones? Is that what they were called? Anyway, you're getting voicemail messages, but they're not voicemail because it's on the answering machine. There's a machine there with a cassette and all that stuff. So you have to actually be listening to what's going on around you. You can't just see. It'd be interesting if they did one for C, wouldn't it? Now, that'd actually be weird. So it's the same thing that is with every AR thing that comes out right now. You basically, move your phone or your iPad, whichever one you're using. I assume an iPod Touch would work as well. You move that over the table, and then it figures out, okay, I think this is about where. Tap here to make sure that that's actually where you want this thing to play out. You say yes, and then it takes you through a very quick, though incredibly boring tutorial of how to, manipulate stuff, pick it up, turn it around, zoom in, zoom out, get it off the screen, all that. Um, which is always fun. It's always interesting to pick something up that doesn't exist and, turn it around in your space. So far, the best thing I've seen, and again, I've only played a tiny bit. This isn't really about this game. It's just sort of, well, thoughts on AR, like I say. It's very convincing, and there's been a thing that Apple has done with their events last year, the, high speed, time flies, one more thing, where they would put, like, an AR logo sort of in your space, and it never really worked for me for a couple of reasons, not the least of which was it was just kind of floating in space, so I couldn't really tell if it was doing what they wanted it to do. When you start the thing for Time Capsule, it starts with a letter that's laying on the table, and it looks like it's laying on my table. When you get through with that, the answering machine and the box of keepsakes that you're supposed to go through are right there on the table. It looks like they're right there on the table. Where it breaks down is when you go to actually interact with the stuff, because, of course, you wanna pick it up, but you're still looking at a plate of glass. So you're tapping on the thing, and you can bring it, and you can turn it around, you can zoom in, you can get closer and all that stuff, and that's great. But at that point, we've broken the "we're in my space," or "this stuff is in my space" thing, and we're back to sort of a it reminded me of Myst. I didn't play Myst a lot, but it reminded me of Myst in that you tap on something and it sort of zooms in. If that was Myst, that might have been some other game that I was playing instead of Myst instead. The language right now is not overly great. What I will say is the thing that I love about it is I'm the only one who can see it. There's something, and of course, at some point we'll want AR that has a community aspect to it where we can all look at the thing on the table because, you're holding up your phone, I'm holding up my phone. I know there are games actually that Apple has in the App Store where two players can play. I don't know if they're connected by Bluetooth or if it's just that they're on the same network, but I can control one tank on this side of the table. You can control the other tank on the other side of the table. We can both move around. I know they have those experiences. At the same time, some of my favorite games in life have been games that I know I'm playing and you don't. And I don't mean like that I'm making it up, but I was always turned on by the idea of the assassination game. Never played it because never had enough people around. But the whole idea that in your high school, in your college, in your city, whatever, you've got a dossier on somebody. They know that they should be watching out for things. And I'm riding the city bus, maybe watching my friend. Nobody else on the bus is in on our game. Nobody else on the bus knows that we're doing this thing. I'll do one that sounds much more benign. That was an incredible amount of fun. Last time I was at Disney World back in 2012, maybe. Golly, was it that long ago? Yeah, I think so. They have a really neat game that is played all over the park called Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. And you go to the firehouse, or there's a place you can go in New Orleans Square. And I think there might be one other place. And every day you can get 5 cards, like playing cards, like you would have for Pokemon or, poker or something like that. Pokermon. And the thing is, you don't do anything with those cards until you find a special place in the park where you can wave one of those cards. And they're just normal cards, but it's got a camera set up someplace that it's responding to the activation card. And it exists where everybody else is, but everybody else doesn't see it until you do something. So I'll give you an example. You're walking down Main Street in Disney World. You look down and there's a thing on the ground and it's a medallion. And okay, one of these things is going to happen here. So you go stand on that medallion and you wave the card, and something in the window is gonna light up and go nuts on you. And then you play cards against that thing in the window that to everybody else passing by just looked like a, just a normal window display. It looked like a painting, I believe, before, or maybe a mirror, before you waved the card and it activated with some, fun something on the screen. It seems ridiculous to talk about games as being a major driver for augmented reality, but that's the kind of thing that could get people excited. Now, maybe only 1 in 10 people are gonna be excited by that possibility, but that one person is gonna be so excited they might drag 2 or 3 more in. I don't know. The idea of having your own world in the world is actually a really appealing thing. Now, Ron Moore is actually quoted in the press release about this, talking about all the storytelling possibilities. He's a writer, it's a lot of words, and he probably didn't even write these words. Basically, what he was saying was he likes the idea that he can flesh out the story, that he can tell you other things that happened that didn't happen on screen through this AR event. And that to me is really fascinating as well. I'm bothered by the fact that right now we're pretty much limited to the one space that we wave the thing over, right? So if I've got a card table and I do that, that's where this is going to happen. If I got a coffee table and I'm doing that, hey, like that one. I've got a coffee table and I'm doing that, that's the space we're going to be limited to. You can see the possibility that one day we would have either, I don't know, a profile for our homes maybe. Get a phone with LiDAR, go through, walk around it, maybe give it 2 or 3 rooms, and suddenly you've opened up this world that nobody else can see to a bigger part of your house or home. You can see the possibility of like a LiDAR thing, I don't know, an orb, a ball. Maybe it comes built into, the 3rd generation HomePod or something, where it actually maps out your room. And so then instead of your game being tied to the table that you're at right now, your game is all around the room, because that was the thing. And while I was sort of knocking this whole, it's hard to believe I only played this for 5 minutes. While I'm knocking this whole thing, I will tell you that it was immersive enough that the box of trinkets on the table and the answering machine on the table, that part was immersive enough, and the dad's voice coming off the answering machine, all of that was immersive enough that I did, without thinking, take my phone and try to pan around and see if there was other stuff in my room. I know there's not. I know that I mapped that part right there. But just that part is immersive enough that I found myself thinking, "Oh, I wonder what's over there." Well, what's over there is my couch, because it's still my house. But it was honestly, it's fascinating. I get so turned on. I get more turned on by AR than I do VR, honestly, because there's the idea of finding stuff in your world. Somebody, I don't wanna say hiding stuff in your world, but sure, hiding stuff in your world. Wouldn't it be neat to, instead of waking up in the morning and there's a note on the fridge, somebody has written in marker all over the fridge with a message that's just for you that nobody else can see? Obviously, I don't want them to have, drawn on the fridge. I wanna be able to see the message that's just for me. As far as doing it for all mankind, why not? I mean, it works as far as synergy is concerned. I don't know whether Ron Moore actually had anything to do with the stuff that went on in this game, but if he did, that's great. I honestly, as much as I distrust press releases, mostly because I had somebody hand me a press release one time that had, a quote from me that I had never done or said or made. I don't even know if Ron Moore knows that they were doing a press release. But he talked in here about being able to sort of flesh out the story, and that part to me is really interesting. So interesting, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm actually thinking of watching the rest of season 1 of For All Mankind, because it bored me. I didn't like it, but I wanna understand what's happening with this game. That's how excited I am about AR, that I might actually go back and watch the rest of that so I can figure out what's going on in this experience. Because right now, all I'm doing is holding up the objects. Right now, all I'm doing is picking up something and say, "Oh, that's interesting." Had I actually watched all of season 1, it would probably actually mean something to me. Like, "Oh, yeah, that's the time they went to that thing, or that's the time that that person came over and did that stuff." Gets people talking about AR, gets people talking about For All Mankind. I don't know. Seems like a win. Curious if you guys have played it. You can let me know. Info@macosken.com. So in a minute, I'm going to rain all over the parade that I just started. Before I do that, though, I want to remind you about something that I've asked you to do for tomorrow. It was almost an accident, the series of questions for this week's In a Few Minutes. It basically came down to me joking last Friday about the Snoopy thing and then talking about the past 15 years for Apple. But that distilled down into 3 questions for all of the guests on In a Few Minutes this week. What has wowed you from Apple over the last 15 years? What has surprised you over the last 15 years? And what do you want out of the next 15 years? I have had some really fascinating answers from the guests on the show. It's been, who was it? Jeff Gamet, Dave Hamilton, Shelley Brisbane, and tomorrow wraps up the week with Mike Rose of the After Show. The After Show's Mike Rose, they call him. No longer maybe Mike Rose. I also asked you guys to send me in answers to those questions. I've gotten a few. I have not read them yet because I don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to start compiling those tonight for tomorrow's show, all of which is to say there is still time for you to answer the questions. I've honestly been really, just with the people that I've talked to for In a Few Minutes this week, I've been turned on by the breadth of things that they have been interested in, by the breadth of things that they've been excited about. And I'd love to hear from you on it as well. So, what has wowed you from Apple over the last 15 years? What has surprised you from Apple over the last 15 years? And what do you want to see in the next 15 years? Info@macosken.com is the way to let me know. Info, I-N-F-O, info@macosken.com. So I said the second part of the show would be, I hope Dan Riccio is doing what we think he's doing. One of the things I talked about, I don't know if it's gone up yet, but I was actually on the Apple Context Machine with Brian Chaffin earlier this week. Well, we recorded it anyway. I don't know if it's out yet or not. But we were talking about how to do Apple News. We were talking about Rumor. We were talking about how frustrated I get with Rumor. And we, touched on the fact that Bloomberg says that Dan Riccio now, his whole job now is to work on AR and VR for Apple. I mentioned that on macOS Ken, but I also mentioned the fact that it was only rumor. And Brian has pretty much talked me into that is definitely what Dan Riccio is doing now, because it wasn't just Bloomberg that said it. It was Mark Gurman that said it. And Mark Gurman tends to be right more often than not. He's got sources who are well placed, and he usually talks to more than one before he goes with a story. So Brian's feeling is, if Mark Gurman says that Dan Riccio is working on AR and VR, you can take it to the bank. I'm not gonna put all my money in that bank, but I'm putting more money in that bank now. I'm more convinced about that than I was about the West Point, Georgia Kia factory, and I was fairly convinced about that. The reason I hope he's right is because one of the articles that I read earlier said if Dan Riccio is actually working on AR, that means Apple thinks they're getting close to something, either AR or VR. Because we need, if AR is going to be a thing, to wear it. Something happened to my shoulder like a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what. And I'm not looking for pity or anything like that. I will say I don't have the range of movement right now in my shoulder that I would like to have because it's painful. It's getting better. I don't know what happened, but standing, like even when my shoulder is fine, standing and holding your phone in front of yourself to have an AR experience takes you out of the AR experience. You're also just limited by, it's just limiting. It's limiting. We need to be able to wear it. And that's not a complaint. We're going to get there. This is a better AR experience than AR experiences we were having a couple of years ago through the phone. Obviously, Apple is working on stuff that's making it all better, but we need to wear it. One of the greatest things, I know I've talked about this before, but when I had my VR rig, that I was using for the stuff that I was doing for Roddenberry when I was doing Mission Log and Mission Log Live and all that stuff. Sensar is this company that was doing a VR platform. I don't know if they still are or not. I think they got sold to someone else. I don't know what their state is right now, but they had a couple of things that were absolutely fascinating. I mean, first of all, they had some stuff that was like, oh, this is a neat room, and you can sit around in this neat room and you can talk to other people if there were ever other people to talk to. The two things that were most fascinating to me was they had a sort of a space museum that was all dedicated to the Apollo missions. And the neatest thing was they had a model of the Earth and a model of the Moon, and they were theoretically as far from each other as they would be in like in real life, scaled down, obviously. But they had there was a line in the air, and that line actually represented Apollo 11 and its trajectory from the Earth to the Moon. And I can't remember if it was back or not, but I know definitely from the Earth to the Moon. And you could walk down that line and you could see it, and that was really neat. But what was really interesting is if you leaned in to that line of flight, you could actually hear audio between Mission Control and Apollo 11 at that point in time. That you could sit and listen to that audio, and that might be kind of interesting to you, but you wouldn't really have a clear concept of what was going on, like where they were on their journey. You could look at a line that would tell you where they are on their journey, but you wouldn't have the context of what's going on with these people. Though it was nothing like a real experience, it was a real experience. You leaned into this beam of light, and however it knew, whatever it knew, the closer you got to it, the louder the audio got until you had your ear right next to it. And then you were hearing it as if you were either on the lunar module or you were at mission control. The other one that was fascinating was there was a tomb in Egypt, not one of the Great Pyramids, but another one, a very small tomb, actually. And it's not the kind of place that you or I could ever go. But some scientists had photographed it in minute detail, and then they had recreated it in this VR space. And so you could go stand in this tomb and you could lean in. And maybe leaning in is the whole thing rather than what we have right now, which is a design language of, yeah, pinch to zoom, pinch to zoom. Well, that's okay. But there's something about standing in the space. There's something about leaning in. Or with the future of AR, something about picking that thing up and bringing it closer to your face. Now, I personally have this is where my imagination breaks down. I don't know what that design language is going to be. I don't know what's going to make it possible for us to pick up a thing and do that. It may always be that it's laying on the table and I get closer to it. I lean in closer to it. But once you've got me actually interacting with stuff, once you've actually got me actually interacting with a setting that doesn't exist, you've won the game. I mean, it'd be fun for entertainment, sure. It'd be fun for games. It'd be really fun for education. The image that I have in my head is, I know nothing about the Battle of Hastings. Is Hastings a place? Was Hastings a dude? I have no idea. I know that the Battle of Bunker Hill actually took place on Breed's Hill. I don't know what it looked like. I don't know how it happened. I've seen dioramas, but you know what they don't do? Move a lot. And of course, you can watch, a film recreation of it, but that's not going to give you the whole view, right? It's not going to show you everything. Imagine being able to recreate that on your table so that you could, see whichever part you're trying to see. I hate the fact that I'm thinking in terms of battles, but I'm thinking that that would actually be a fairly interesting or sexy thing. Like any number of educational possibilities. We were talking, Allison Sheridan and I were talking a couple of weeks ago on In a Few Minutes, and she was talking about people using VR to train doctors. And she seemed to be thinking that it was watching the doctor and see what he's doing. I think what they were actually talking about was handling the things that a doctor might handle, like a liver or something along those lines. I don't think it was about handling the scalpel. I think it was about being able to move around in a patient's body without actually having to move around in a patient's body. The learning possibilities are incredible, and they become even more incredible not when you're holding your phone up to show you an approximation of something, but when you forget that that thing's not there and you lean in to see it. When you lean in to see it and the detail comes in, even more brightly, and then throw in a good audio, and you've got a show. I get really fascinated by the possibility. I hope it doesn't get stymied by people saying AR sucks because you're holding your phone up in front of everything. I hope that things like this actually excite people or turn people on. I'm afraid they become gimmicky or they stay gimmicky because that's a gimmick right now. It's a good gimmick. But Time Capsule is a gimmick right now. But if it's a good enough gimmick, it might get some people to see past the gimmicky bit onto the possibilities, which turned me on so much. I just talked about them for 25 minutes, I think. Curious if you have any thoughts. Curious if you've seen something that actually turned you on in that space. Or if you think the whole thing's bunk, you don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, just let me know what you think. info@macoscan.com. You can also leave a comment here. You can leave a comment on this video, info@macoscan.com. It's kind of funny. There was a comment left on today's edition of macOS Ken, I believe it was, on YouTube. A gentleman saying, I hate Apple. Why is this being suggested to me? I don't think that comment went to the people that he meant for it to. Hey, if you're in the chat room, please stay in the chat room. I will be by momentarily. If you're not in the chat room, we'd love to see you. This happens Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. You can also subscribe to the audio podcast. I'm assuming you know one or the other of those things, though, because you can hear me. I know you can. macOS can, and in a few minutes, wrap up their respective weeks tomorrow morning. We'll wrap this up tomorrow afternoon, and I will talk to you soon. You know what I should have asked? I should ask you guys right now. What gets you as excited about technology as AR obviously gets me? Because I honestly get very excited about that, more so than VR. But I didn't. So, Jeff Peterson asked, what is the Apollo 11 thing? I'm going to go ahead and answer that because it happened to catch my eye. You're not going to be able to find it unless you have a Windows machine and you have an Oculus Rift or something like that. It was a thing in Sensar, which is a platform that worked with Oculus and maybe the HTC Vive. I'm not sure. But it was basically, it was a mock-up, but that was so, what's the word I'm looking for? Immersive. They also actually there had a Saturn V rocket laying on its side, which is interesting too, because you could, walk the length of it, give you an idea of how big that thing actually was and how small the capsule in which people were traveling actually was too. Anyway, now I'm going to go back to the start of the show and see what else people said. Yes, I hit record. That's excellent. John says his biggest problem with AR is he'd have to clean off the table. Right? You can do it on the floor, but then you got to sit on the floor. Which one's better? I will confess, actually, that I also I did it on the bed, which sounds dirty, but I was in the bedroom getting because I've got a chair in there that I sit and I write, and yeah, that's another flat surface. Unless you sleep in a hammock, in which case you're totally screwed, John. Cool. I wanna know more about that. I saw a presentation on the SIGGRAPH calendar, I hope I pronounced that right, paper, excuse me, describing an algorithm to reproduce your hands in the VR, AR space. This stuff is happening. Yeah, once you get the glasses, though. Once you can actually wear it, because I can't recreate my hands if I have to use my hands to hold the phone. We should all get gimbals, so, we can hold one and hold it steady and then reach out in front of it and pick something up. Or we could go to Macy's. Hey, it's a gimbals joke. Those work great with the kids. Interesting. That's really cool. David says some Oculus 2 games use hand, not controller support. Pinching means picking up. That's really neat. John says the paper describes some advanced algorithms that reproduce every finger and skin fold. That's really gross. Mapping the entirety of the hands would give much better interaction opportunities. That is absolutely true. Hello, Roger. Roger made it for part 2 of the show. Unfortunately, though, part 2 was really just going right. It's interesting about the virtual caching thing that you're talking about, Bill, or that you guys are talking about. Who was the other one? It was Bill and Eugene. Was it Eugene? Yes. It's an interesting idea. Oh, darn it. Hold on. Okay, you guys answered the VR thing about Apollo 11. Bill, that's a fascinating idea. Overlays of history on things you're actually looking at would be very cool. I like the idea of that for audio as well. Well, I like the idea of that for audio. Walking tours of historical places. Um, well, anyway, yeah. AR presents the possibility of bringing technology into your world and understanding more about what happened there. Same thing could happen with audio as well. It's just, to me, it's fascinating. Ah, John just downloaded the time capsule on his iPad. He'll set it up a card table and try it after the show. Did you watch For All Mankind, John? Nice. Just wait till we have a VR chat room for the live show. Right. Okay. So here's one of my big frustrations about the time that I was working with Sansar. I wanted them to set it up so that I could actually record good audio, and that never happened. I love that idea. Once you can have a VR chat room, and I think you were just kidding, but once you can have a VR chat room, then you have a VR show. Then suddenly you're not doing a call-in show. You're doing oh, I think Chuck had something he wanted to say. Oh, I think Matthew had something he wanted to say. Oh, I think Amy had something she wanted to say. And Donna. And now I'm naming people again. Back to Romper Room. Ha! Jeff Peterson says to answer the I hate Apple dude, it's getting pushed to you because you interacted with it. Yeah, see, he's going to get all my videos now. That's interesting. Jeff says my excitement line for tech is portable but not constrictive. Hank says not big on VR, a little interested in AR, but computational photography is something I'm learning to love. I don't know what that is. Can you send me a link, Hank? Roger says there's a Saturn V rocket on its side 20 minutes from his house. Yeah, but we're not all 20 minutes from your house. That's the thing. I mean, that is cool. That's really neat for you. Isn't it neat, though, that you could bring the same thing to somebody in Little Rock, Arkansas, let's say? I was going to say, Montgomery, Alabama, but they actually live pretty close to rockets, too. It's bigger than big, says Roger. It's true. It's really big. Huh. John, all right. I said he could sit on the floor. He said he'd also have to clean off the floor. Man, I hear you. I know my floor is clean. It's not my fault. Jeff has access to an Oculus. Yeah, look, the sensor thing, it's free. I know they were trying to do some stuff that was more about gamifying some things, but they have some really cool stuff there. So I think it's sensor.com. Roddenberry actually has, if you're a Star Trek fan, Roddenberry actually has a, I can't remember what it's called. Oh, the Roddenberry Nexus in Sensor, where you can handle props and you can see artwork that people haven't seen. There's a painting there. It's not a painting, it's a drawing, but it's huge, even though the original drawing is about this big. They brought some people up to down to LA because they're in San Francisco. They brought some people down to LA and spent 3 or 4 days doing really detailed captures of tons of stuff at the Roddenberry offices. So it's neat because you can pick up, you can pick up props and look at them. You can pick up prototype toys that never came out. There are these little audio things that you can listen to. Some of them are voiced by people that were involved with them. I voiced a couple of them. John Champion voiced a couple of them. There were 1 or 2 that Rod voiced. It's fun to move around in that space, and it's really neat to, again, it's the whole leaning in thing. I mean, you can get this close to a screen-worn costume and see the weave, which is nuts. You can see where there had been a patch on it that they, took off, which is crazy that you can get that level of detail. And then there's a bunch of crap. So, I would honestly suggest checking it out, though, for the Apollo 11 thing. I want to say that the thing where you could go to the tomb was called the Explorers Club or something like that. And then check out, check out the Roddenberry Nexus and Sensor as well. That was a lot of fun. John McKee, Love for All Mankind. Okay, so you'll probably have fun with the app then. I do not know what device pit stop is, Amy. Roger wonders whether VR would give you something like the sense of the size of something like a Saturn V. It looked pretty big to me. I mean, as long as you set yourself properly, there's a way to, because at least the old Oculus, I don't know about the Oculus Quest, the Oculus Rift, you've got either 2 or 3 sensors in your room. And so you stand there and it, you hold out your hands and it figures out about how tall you are. So the stuff that you then go into should be scaled for you. So kind of, yes, I feel like it did. I mean, I don't have a clear sense of, I'm having a hard time in my head picturing the Earth and the Moon thing that I was describing earlier because the amount of space that they covered was so big. So they were trying to do that to, scale. I got a sense of how large it was, yes. I mean, I don't know because I haven't stood, under an actual Saturn V lately. The other thing is a lot of times when you see them, they're standing up. And so, of course, it just looks like a big, tall thing. Like the one that I saw in Alabama was, standing. So then you're just under something tall. That's interesting. Roger says, I know early VR was used to check designs of some of the latest Navy ships so that designs could walk through, the designers, excuse me, could walk through the spaces and locate equipment that didn't have sufficient clearance. They were wireframe graphics at the time. Yeah, that's an amazing use, I think. And you're talking about back when graphics were not as good. Interesting. John says when he took pictures of the Saturn V in Florida, he put his sister Nancy in the scale. How many Nancys then is a Saturn V? And how many Smoots is that bridge? That joke's for one of you. I don't know which one. That's really interesting. Matthew says, I wonder if instead of loaning museum pieces to other museums, that in the future they'll just put a VR room of said pieces and have a sign saying it's virtually lended from such and such museum. Since you're not allowed to touch stuff, I mean, I think that would actually be kind of interesting. I mean, there's always going to be something cooler about having been in the room with the Pietà, right? Which I never was. There's always going to be something cooler about being, standing in front of something that was actually chiseled by Michelangelo. There's going to be something cooler about standing next to a piece that's, from the tomb of the pharaoh. But those things tour and they take time and it takes money and you have to get to where they are and then you can't touch it. So, I mean, it would be interesting actually, instead of having to go to a museum to see a virtual thing, just make all the museums virtual. And I know they need money to keep doing what they're doing, but could you join them virtually, support them, with real money and then have access to it? Could be fun. Oh, you see, and then the next thing Matthew said was, you can't touch it. It's true. Yeah, I think that'd be fascinating. At that point, it could just be an empty room and you could just make your own museum. Well, see, now there you go. And now do it in VR so I can put that in my living room and walk around it and take a look and, get a sense of the scale and all that stuff. Take one of those two-story statues of, Ramses the Great and put it in my living room and have it like go straight through the ceiling so it stops right there. That gives you an idea of the scale of things. Put the base of a Saturn rocket in your living room. And obviously it takes up more than your living room, and that gives you an idea of the scale as well, even if it won't fit. So many possibilities. Oh man, you went to the 64 and 65 World's Fair? My mom and dad went to the 64 and 65 World's Fair before they were my mom. Well, they were my mom and dad, but they weren't even married. Kids. They were just kids, young whippersnappers. If somebody would recreate the 1939 World's Fair in VR, I'd live there. It'd be difficult to live in VR, but I'd give it a shot. Eugene says you can have a coin slot in the side of the VR headset to pay for what you see, like those telescopes. Yeah, the problem is that would really make the headset heavy. But you could have like a stripe or a swipe. Just keep running your card through. That's a horrible idea. Somebody, and I don't know who it is, somebody actually sent me an email of their racing rig. It's somebody who comes to the live show. Man alive, are you here? I can't remember who sent it to me. I apologize, but they sent me a picture and it's like so many, it's like a huge display, and I want to see another screen and like a real Yeah, that's cost prohibitive though. If you can do that, if you can do that in AR, VR, that'd be fun. Apple Pay, everybody's saying. Yep. Except you'd have to take the AR thing off so it could see your face. All right, we've hit the end here, and I've actually got to go to the store. Um, this was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Some of you seem to have, which is great. Thanks a lot for being here. If you haven't sent in your what wowed me, what surprised me, and next 15 years, go ahead and do that. Info at macosken.com because I would love to have you be part of tomorrow's show for everybody who's not here. All right, guys and gals, cats and kittens. Pow pow. I will talk to you later. Take care.